shadows are devoured by even darker shadows, the curtain pulls back and reveals a world without light!
Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is TR Bailey, and I am going to discuss net decking today. Now, as of late, I have seen a lot of topics on forums and various Facebook groups discussing net decking and some of the pros and cons of it. I wanted to talk about, whether I think it's good for the game or whether I think it's bad for the game. And this is a discussion with you guys, so as always, make sure you leave your comments below. But anyway, guys, let's jump right into it. Alright guys, so before we get really deep into this discussion, I think the most important thing is to have a definition for net decking. Because there are a lot of different forms of net decking, but here is what my opinion is of what the definition is. So this is based upon the video today. This is what I'm basing all of my discussion off of this definition. Net decking is emulating successful deck lists, sometimes to exactness, to improve your chances of winning in competitive play. The reason why I put it that way is because just because you are copying a deck list online does not necessarily mean you will play card to card the same thing. There are a lot of experiences where I've seen players that use online resources to create their deck, but it doesn't really match any of the online decks at all. But that is still, in a way, considered net decking. And that's why I feel like it's very important to discuss this today. So, the first question is net decking good for the game? Well, let's talk about that a little bit. There are pros and cons, and let's start out with the pros. For me, the first pro is it's a good starting point for new players who are struggling with making consistent, strong deck lists. I feel like new players definitely always need a starting point, and what's better than talking to someone who has been successful at the game? So to me, it's a really good starting point for new players, and I highly encourage new players to try it. The next one is it can be used for a reference guide for others to try to see what kind of ideas are out there, to see what options you might have, because sometimes using more than your own brain can be very helpful. Sometimes people are trying different things in the same deck, and that's why you see, like, for example, Madolches is like that. You have, a stun variant of Madolches. There's like 4 or 5. And then you have, like a very aggressive style of Madolches, and I've seen about 100 different versions of that. I mean, so you have a large variety of ideas out there, and sometimes you might not think of specific combos, and bouncing ideas off of others can be very helpful. And lastly, it shows determination to get better and succeed at the game. If you're trying to get better at the game of basketball, then who better to look at than someone like a Kobe Bryant or LeBron James? Looking at the way they fundamentally shoot the basketball, or the way that they dribble, the way they look up court, their fundamentals in passing. Those kind of things are very important that you want to practice and get better at. But you're not going to be successful if you don't have a standard to set yourself to. So if you can set yourself as if you can set other deck lists and other players as the standard, and you can try to emulate them to some degree to get better, then I feel like, if that's the way you're going to be successful, then you need to go for it and try it if that's your style. And some of the things that are bad for the game when it comes to net decking is, if it's done incorrectly, the players can just lose on sight on what's important, which is getting better at the game and having fun. A lot of times, if players just, straight up copy deck lists and they don't test, and they don't do things, they're not really going to improve. You're not going to necessarily understand the deck. And 2 is, if you don't understand how to play the deck in the first place, everything that you did to copy the deck list and pick up all the cards is just going to be in vain, because if you don't know how to play the deck, well, it doesn't matter how good the deck list is. If someone tried to take my deck list for windups but just can't play the deck, it's not going to help them. If I try to take a deck like Logan Johnson's top 32 deck list for dragons is completely different than almost all the dragon decks out there. People dislike that video just because it's dragon rulers, but go check it out. It's on my channel. He was kind enough to do an interview with me, and he played cards like Karma Cut. And to be quite honest with you, if you don't know how to play Karma Cut correctly, well then I don't think you're going to be doing a lot of winning with his version of the deck. So with all things considered, I feel like you definitely want to have an understanding of the deck and not just copy and paste things. Also, it creates an issue with a format, making it absolutely indiverse. So I think this format has been pretty bad with the whole net decking concept. I don't necessarily think it's bad, but I think it gives players shortcuts on testing. I don't think that dragons are... I think they're the best deck, but I don't think they're so dominantly the best deck that 28 out of 32 players at YCS San Mateo should be playing the deck. In my eyes, I don't think there are many decks that are far behind the deck. I feel like a deck like Madolches can be as good, if not better, than Dragons in a lot of scenarios. And so, as I was testing, which I test extremely thoroughly. I tested Dragons, and the deck is great. Now, don't get me wrong about that, but when I tested Madolches and Windups, I was just like, wow, these decks are just so good. They're good against Dragons. I tested Spellbooks, and that didn't work out for me. But I tested a variety of decks. And I can tell you 3 off the top of my head that compete with Dragons. Actually 4, because Spellbooks is pretty decent against Dragons as well. So like Girgia, Karg, Hurries, Madolches, Windups, and Spellbooks, when I tested those decks, they all had a lot of success against Dragons. And not just post-board either. I was winning a lot of game 1s. So, I don't like that it gives a format and identity without people really trying to test everything. When I talked to Billy Brake at YCS San Mateo, he said, I don't know why more people don't play Madolches. I actually don't want to play that matchup. And that's really, that's honestly what he said. Madolches is a tough deck, tough deck to beat, has really solid plays. Same thing with Windups. Insectors tested pretty decently too. The list could go on and on. This format should be more diverse, but because people are just net decking, a lot of players are playing Dragons, which, don't get me wrong, is one of the best decks in the format and is the best, but I don't think it should be as dominant as it is right now. Anyway, moving on. Another con is it is better to find a way to play your certain tech cards in your deck by your own play testing. So, you can get ideas off the internet and stuff, but if you are playing tech cards in your deck because Phile Luna said it was good, or Patrick Hoban or Billy Brake said it was good, all power to you. But playstyle is real in the game, and determining your tech choices really comes down to player preference on a lot of things. And so that's where I think that the whole net decking really affects is the tech cards and decks. For example, like going back to what Logan Johnson did at YCS San Mateo with Karma Cut. Yep. So now we've heard kind of the spiel of what's good and what's bad about net decking. So how do you properly net deck then? Let's jump right into that. So to me, there are 2 ways to properly net deck to where it's beneficial for you as a player. The first one is copy a deck list for card, test it and find out which cards you like and which cards you don't. The cards that you don't, you should start replacing them with cards that you think are better and keep testing until you find the right deck list for you. The other way is to use multiple resources when searching for the deck list. Maybe see 4 or 5 YouTube videos for the deck list. And you can find out a variety of cards that people run, and by doing this you can put together a deck from what you think will work for you and test it and tweak it until you find the right combination. Another thing that's really good with this is that if you're looking at cards and net decking, you can also really find good ways of strategies of beating decks and understanding the meta a little bit better because you can understand a lot of more plays. So even if you net deck a deck to see what it's kind of like, you can still counter it with your own deck and find out a little bit more about each deck, which is always good. And the last thing is, if you have the same deck list as another player, make sure you can provide at least 3 reasons that are unrelated to the player or the deck list's success at another event. If you cannot do this, you either A, don't understand how your deck works, or B, you're not testing correctly. So, I mean, you really want to know why you're playing your deck. I think that's the biggest question players should ask themselves before they go to an event is, why am I playing this deck? And if you can't give yourself 3 reasons other than, if you can't give yourself 3 reasons that aren't, well, Patrick Hoban did good, or Billy Brake is pretty good, and Billy Brake showed me this, and that, then you're not doing it right. You know what I mean? You gotta find through playing. My friend Ralph, he went to YCS San Mateo with us. He's been out of the game for, a whole format or so. He didn't really play at all in March. And he is a pretty good player. He doesn't have any YCS tops, but he is that good. And at YCS San Mateo, he took the same deck list that Patrick Hoban had played at I believe it was, he used the deck list that he played at the ARG Circuit Series in Dallas. And when I talked to him about it, he had tried so many things, because I sat there testing with him. He had tried a lot of various things. I watched him play the other version of the deck. I watched him play Dragoonity Rulers with about 5 or 6 cards different from Hoban. Then I saw him do this and that. And he just switched it around to his own playstyle. And then he realized at the end that his deck list happened to end up being the same as Patrick Hoban's. And that was through his own testing. But he had the base and started with Patrick Hoban's deck list and worked around it, switched cards the way he wanted to see what it would work. And he ended up back at Patrick Hoban's deck list because it worked well, and he placed 40th at YCS San Mateo, so he was pretty successful doing it, and he tested the correct way. He could provide me probably 10 reasons why that deck list was the one that was right for him, and he played very well at the event, and so to him, that's huge congratulations. He net decked, if you would, correctly, and it worked out very well for him. Alright guys, well, thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment below and let me know what you think about net decking. It means a lot if you leave a comment so I can kind of see what you guys think. If you have any requests for future videos, also leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Either you can simply search that on Facebook as TRBailey823, same username as my YouTube channel. And as always, guys, have a great day. This is TR Bailey, signing out.
Right there. Switch your hips when you walk and let down your hair. I like the way you do that right there. Big your lips when you talking, that make me stir. I like the way you look in them pants, say you're fine. But mama a quarter piece, she far from a dime. The type of girl that'll get you up and go make you grind.